Hello, my name's Vic Gilgis, and I'm here with this podcast to help you have a better life, and myself, of course, through showing you some understandings of how we tick, how the mind works, how our psychology can destroy us, really, sometimes, or well, at least make us very kind of worrying and upset and what have you. Now, the title of this podcast is "You are living in a dream, so why not make it a good one?" Now, it's a bit of a heavy introduction here because it's saying that, well, it's what I've said, is that our thoughts and are not real. They are. It is our take on things, and I've said this before. And our take on things are not actual reality. Now, I know, how could I put it? Real things happen in the world to us, but it is always our take on those things. And yes, when we come to the extremes of events, when shock things happen to us naturally, we're going to be triggered by that, and it's going to affect us. We'll talk about that later, but what I'm saying is that majority of the time when we are kind of our take on things, that which is if everything's in the garden is rosy, that's fine. But when it isn't, and we are knittering and worrying and being anxious and fretful, as we are in today's society, because it makes us that way with all the bad news and the politics of it and all the wars that are going on, and we start to fret about that, and we start to fret about what the neighbours might think of us, or how much do we earn, or how is our, I mean, all that stuff. When that is our take on things, and it's not reality. The reality is, well, I'll talk about what the reality is later on. So here's how it works. So I'm hoping to, as I go through this podcast, to show you, give you some examples of how what I'm talking about is true, is what is happening, so that when we get it, and I'm not, how can I put it? When you, hopefully you've got this understanding already, but I'm trying to improve this understanding so that once you've got it, then you go through your life much better and brilliantly, in actual fact, as you'll come to see when I'll get on with it. So here's how it works. This morning, I wanted a story for this podcast. And odd things had been mulling around in my mind, but I didn't really have anything to talk about that I thought of any substance. And well, I hope this one of some substance. I'm sure it is, because of what happened, and this is how it does happen. So what I did was I thought, no, Vic, give it a rest. So I just went out for I had a sausage roll and a cup of coffee at Greg's, what I call a cheaper breakfast, not a posh breakfast. And when I came out of there, I met a young lady, and I'll put it in the context here, and I got the story I needed straight away. So this is what happens when you have an intention in your mind, when you're looking through a particular set of eyes, stuff does come to you. And I'll talk about this young lady. This young lady lives an alternative lifestyle. She's a nice person. She's not got much money, but she's able-bodied and has got her life sorted out in many ways. But what I bumped into this morning was just a person who was worry about really nothing to worry about, the way she told me. So I want to talk about that later, but that gave me my story, and all the ideas for this podcast then poured out. So, as I've said, our thoughts are made up, they are not the truth. I can give you some stories here on our thoughts. So, and this one is really, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you think about and concentrate on. When I was a young man, a teenager, I was met this young lady, and I had a dance with her and all what have you. And she wanted to go home, and basically I couldn't afford a taxi fare. So I didn't take her home. I walked home on my own. And I saw her the next week at the dance place, and she's very attractive, very nice. And she said to me, "Look, if you take me home tonight, I'll cook you chicken and chips." Well, that did it. I mean, that sealed the deal. And so I took her home. Actually, I didn't pay for the taxi. Sorry about that. So I took her home, and I had this wonderful chicken and chips meal. I'm going back to, oh God, I don't know, before the 60s, the early 60s, showing my age. But anyway, I took her home. And I won't go into too much detail here, better not. But I soon found out that she was a brilliant cook, but also, and please, this is a story, but I found out that she was a bit of an nymphomaniac. Now, when you're a young man and you meet someone who's going to cook you chicken and chips and is a nymphomaniac, you're living the dream. I've got everything I wanted. My dreams had come true, but it got to be like she got very insistent, and I got like, it's like eating your favourite meal but having it every morning, breakfast, afternoon and tea. You've had enough of it. Steak and chips. No, I don't want steak and chips again. I had steak and chips. No, steak and chips again. And so what I did was, I couldn't believe that I was thinking like this, but I thought, I can't carry on like this because it's just too much for me. And I don't think it wasn't a physical thing, believe me, not then when I was a young lad. But I just had enough of this. I'd have rather have sat at home and had a cup of tea just for a change. And so I stopped the relationship. And that goes to, be careful of what you wish for. And after that, I faced some repercussions, believe me. She was a bit of a bunny boiler. And so, anyway, I paid for that in the end. So be very careful there. And this is all to do with thoughts. Now, I'll tell another story. And this is a bit of a naughty one. No, it isn't. But I'll tell you the story. When I got my PhD awarded at the college that I was also working at the time, and I got my PhD through this college, I went up and collected my award on the stage with all the other students. And you get, in them days, I don't know what you do now, but you used to get a scroll. And if you opened the scroll, it told you what you'd got your PhD. Now, my PhD was in manufacturing management. I was very proud of it and I'd worked hard for it. And so when I got my PhD awarded, it was a lovely day. My wife then was, so what we're talking about, that's not that time, is it that? Yeah, well, anyway, whatever it was. My wife and my mother were there, that's what I'm going to say. And it conflicts a little bit with the rest of the story. So, and so when I was at home, what I did was I looked at this scroll, and it said that I was awarded a PhD. And when I looked at it, it didn't say I was awarded a PhD in manufacturing management. It said I was awarded a PhD in wishful thinking and services to womankind. I never showed my wife this. So that's the point I'm making. And so I kind of chuckled in a way that they'd done this. Well, what I'm saying is the college staff who knew me because I worked there had done this. And so that was my PhD in wishful thinking and services to womankind. Now, I'll quickly get over the bit services to womankind. What they meant by that was that, basically, every Christmas, I used to go to the Christmas parties, the office parties, and I'd had a little bit to drink, and I just liked kissing the odd female that would let me kiss her. I don't want to get into any arguments here, but I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and it never caused any. I never heard that it caused any trouble. But so that's what they meant by services to womankind, and so I apologise for that. But the important part is the wishful thinking. And the reason that they put that, and I found, and it is because their view of me was that I had like a Walter Mitty existence. I was always thinking that it would all work out, Pollyanna-ish, optimism. I had all these ideas, and that's how it come into my PhD. I was always looking for the good thing, well, as they said, wishful thinking, and there is nothing wrong with that if it's positive, and it was positive for me, and it ended up being successful for me. So that's my thought there. And so what I'm saying is that we get what we are looking for. So if we've got the right eyes for life, and I'll explain this later, it's the way in which we see life, because of the way in which we perceive life or our take on life, you tend to have a good life. And I mentioned in an earlier podcast that we can train our consciousness to be like this, that once we start looking out for things, then things tend to come into our purview. Like when I met this young lady this morning, and all of a sudden talking to her give me a story for this podcast. And all what I'm saying now did, right? So it's about how our awareness of life and consciousness work together, because the thing that we've got, everybody's got, and you've got, I've got, is the fact that we can be aware of things. Now, when we're aware of things, we have a take on what we are aware of. So we might look at a dog and say, oh, that dog's going to bite me. Or somebody else might look at the same dog and say, what a beautiful dog. So when your consciousness is around all dogs being fluffy and lovely, you're bound to be happy with seeing dogs and want to see dogs. But often it can, the opposite can be true, where we look at life through our peepers, through our lens, and look at things as being dangerous, not very nice, awkward, confrontational. And what I'll say there is, I said good story, good life, but bad story, bad life. So I've got some stories on that. Again, little brief mentions here. When I was a young man, I had a trouble just even getting onto ninth class and getting my ordinary national certificate. And it was the world to me to be able to do that. But once I'd achieved that, then that got put aside, and that was an ordinary national certificate. And then I thought, I must get something better. I must get my high national diploma. So it was not good enough. And so I'll go on and on and on about this, that, and the other. But what I'm saying is, when I ended up with my last job, which was a lecturer at a very good university, so I had good salary, good job, I had the job that I dreamed of, etc., and good marriage, good house, car. I started to become unhappy, and this is how I started doing all this. So it's a long story, but I think I've been brainwashed brainwashed myself through being a youngster, and what people, when I went into industry, chasing promotions and what have you, and then getting into academia and doing the same. And I was just brainwashed from being very young to, I must get the next thing, I must be more successful, I must be this, I must be that. And so when I finally got this, it's the first time I realised that I wasn't happy with that. And that's a big lesson. And I'm glad I got it when I did, because some people only get it when they're dying, that they realise what really matters. And so those are like bad stories that we can get into. Now, I'm talking about meeting this young lady this morning for a cup of coffee. She was all in turmoil with her thoughts, because the group this group she worked with was like a well-being group, for want of a better word. She'd got a bit of conflict with people in the group, and was going on about all the ins and outs of this, and she'd become very unhappy, and kind of was saying to me, well, she was having a good moan and groan to me, and I tried to talk to. Well, what I'm saying is that, and this is my view of things. I'm like an old man, an older man. No, I'm an old bloke. I'm really an elderly gentleman. And I look at this young woman who's got good health, is young, and gets by. And I just thought, well, she's got freedom. I mean, she's not got a lot of money, but she's got enough to get by. And I just thought, well, she just doesn't see what she's got. She cannot see what she's got. And when she gets older and gets illnesses and gets this, that and t'other, then she's going to realise just how lucky she was, and she can't see it right now. And I obviously not going to preach to her, but there you go. That kind of just, there was a little lesson in bumping into her, and I just thought, well, there you go. That's how, we live in a dream. We certainly do, our take on things. And when that dream starts turning into a nightmare, well, it's a daymare because we're not dreaming. That is real life. So another thing that I will go on to saying is that, and this is my experience of getting to where I am so far, is that of all the plans I've had and situations I've gone through, what I've come to understand is that life is in charge. You're not. I'm not in charge. And so many things, despite the ways I've plotted and manoeuvred and acquired and done this, that and t'other, life has happened to sometimes get to me going in opposite directions. And that is very true. And so don't worry about that, because life knows what it's doing. It really does. And so when you start to go with the flow, in other words, what I'm saying is that all the times I've tried to do what I think was right, it was a bit of a disaster. And when I went along with things, life's intelligence does really show you what to do. And if you listen for it and look out for it, it certainly will happen. And it happens more when you get rid of the pea brain, get rid of your intellect, and go, I'll talk about this later, and go with another type of deeper intelligence, but I'll mention that in a short while. So let me just have a look at some of the points I want to make here. Looking at good stories of how life helped me. And so I talked earlier about my night class, and because I had no qualifications at that time, a particular set of circumstances just arose where someone who was very senior, was a principal of an evening institute, basically, unknowing to me, got me enrolled there and was a mentor to me as an unknown mentor, but all the time that person was in the background helping me. So that comes along. This is life happening. And I've mentioned this before, when I was trying to do my PhD, three professors I went through, academic institutions, and got blown out. And I'm not saying I give in, but I accepted that it wasn't going to happen for me at that moment in time. And then very soon after that, a person appeared who would be my supervisor at a brilliant institution. Well, it was Oxford. So that happens. Another thing, and this happened to me, was I wanted to change when I was in industry, I wanted to get some different type of experience, because I was in the aircraft industry and I'd been for years. And so I decided, well, no, I must get some different experience. And I went to work for a furniture company in Pontefract as a manager. Well, I mean, it was one of the worst decisions of my life. It was terrible. I sunk underwater every day. I didn't know what I was doing. I was out of my depth, etc., etc. I was a nervous wreck. My wife had to put up with me during that time. It was a nightmare, believe me. I hated it. Anyway, after a year, I got out of the place and got I got a job back in the aircraft industry, actually. There's another story. But coming to the point, what I found out from this, that when I became an academic, that company in Pontefract was one of the biggest learning points I'd ever had. I drew so much from those bad experiences, through those learning experiences, that really, if I could have gone back in time and said, should you go to this crappy company in Pontefract that makes furniture, I would have said yes, because that's just what I did need in life. I needed that type of learning experience. So life, what I'm saying is, life knows what to do, and sometimes it doesn't feel right, but keep on going through that room. In other words, you walk into a room, this is a metaphor, and there's all sorts of geekies and monsters and dragons and water being thrashed at you and being punched on every side, face slapped. Continue walking through the room, because you will get to the exit of the room, and it is an experience which will in actual fact work in your favour. So now, going back to how can we get, when I talked earlier about getting what I wanted in my career, then it does become like a James Bond movie where you're saying, well, the world is never enough. Well, it is never enough. And it can never be enough, because there is another side to things besides. I'm not going to go on this material, don't be materialistic, go woo-woo. I'm not talking about that. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, what really matters is what satisfies your soul. What satisfies your spirit, what inspires you, what makes you want to get up in the morning. And that can be a dog, a cat, it can be a wife, it can be the weather, it can be a sunset, it can be doing stuff like this. It can be using, say, the principles to help you with your life and trying to spread it to others. And so that's what matters, is what does it for you. And it doesn't matter whether you're a bus driver or a brain surgeon. Be a best bus driver you can, be the best brain surgeon you can, because it doesn't really matter. So in other words, you can be washing dishes and I don't know, and then get enlightened and then wash dishes, but you're a happy soul because you know this type of stuff that I'm doing. Now, there is a get out of jail card in all this, and it's called the truth. It's called a deeper intelligence. So when we're trying to work all this out with our mind, and I've mentioned this deeper intelligence, the one that steers us through, that one provides the wisdom, the one that gives us a knowing, and that does, and like, how can I put it, this morning when I met that young lady, and I talked to her, I just got a knowing of what to do with this podcast. And in a way, the universe had set me up for this meeting. And the more that you kind of have faith that this is going to happen, the more that it does happen. So the get out of jail card is what is the truth. Because our thoughts from this little mind of ours is our reality. And each of us has different realities for the same thing. So, but it's not the truth. It's our take on things. The reality is what is actually happening. It is the truth. And so, what's the truth? The truth is beauty. I'm going to put it. You don't need an intellect to know when you look at a lake with ducks and geese or whatever is there and the trees, it just comes to you. You just get a knowing that is wonderful. You don't have to give it marks out of 10. You don't have to analyse it. You just love. You just know, and and the same as with love. Is you don't need a lesson in who to know in what love is. It happens. You just get a knowing, and when we kind of stop trying to be in charge with all our thinking and intellect, which just often crowds out many stuff, when we kind of can put that aside and go quiet to that and settle, then we do move to a deeper intelligence that does inform us and gives us the, like I've just talked about this podcast, it kind of gives us ideas. And these ideas are fresh. Our intellect and our thoughts are always to do with the past and always to do with worrying about trying to predict the future. This intelligence is in the now. And when you get that, and you get a feeling that, like we say with beauty, with love, that is in the now, and that is what we've got. That is our get out of jail card. We've all got this. So through the three principles, we have mind, consciousness, and thought. So we know what consciousness is, that we are aware of our thoughts, but mind is this deeper intelligence. And that comes from something which knows how to spin the planets. And if it knows that, it can certainly look after you. Because it is aware of the bigger picture, which we are not aware of the bigger picture. It knows. Now, I'll finish off now. But so just before I did this, I went swimming. And I've got a lovely pool I go to, nice staff. I love going swimming. I go swimming every Sunday. And what I also love doing is going in the shower. Sorry, I'm talking about the shower. In the, what do I call it? The sauna. It's got a steam room and a sauna. And I love the sauna. And what I love as well is that often in the sauna, there's half a dozen people, men and women, who ought to be what I call psychology professors. They all ought to be, and a lot of them are taxi drivers, and a lot of them are just ordinary people. But what I'm saying is, God Almighty, they know how to run the country. Now, the conversation was basically around the fact that the average, they're looking at Gaza, what's going on there, Palestine and that, and they were looking at the war in Russia with Ukraine. And, they were saying, well, what can we do about it? And then somebody else said, well, all we can do is get on with our lives as best as we can and look after our loved ones and try to be as happy as we can, because what can we do about influencing the politicians? They're the ones that are going to do what they're going to do. And so we can spend a lot. Now, my thoughts there were, well, go on a march or kind of try and not get in touch with the politicians to influence them. But so what they were saying there is that they felt powerless. And when you look at the politicians sometimes and you think, well, they don't listen and they've got all this power, and they've got a difficult job because they've got lots of things to balance. And so it's not as simple as us saying, well, we think they should do this, because they know the books, as it were, they know the details that if they did this, well, this had happened as well. And that's what they do. Hopefully they know that. I'm sure they do. But what I will finish off on is that if these people knew the three principles, they would start to think differently about conflict, about people suffering, because the mindset would be entirely different. They would look through the eyes of beauty and love and caring and more wholesomeness and being more understanding. And maybe, this has got to be done one by one, But the more politicians would have this kind of three principles mindset, as I've explained earlier, how it can change our lives for the better when we work with it, because we've got nothing else to work for. That's how well, nothing else. I mean, what I'm saying is those three things: mind, consciousness, and you've got everything. You've got your ability to think, you've thought, you've got your awareness, which is aware of those thoughts, and you've got this deeper intelligence of mind, which is always there to steer you on the right course when basically, and it will give you all the common sense that you need. It will steer you in the right direction because it knows. And what I'm saying is that, so I mentioned this about the politicians. Well, wish we knew the three principles, and maybe some of them do, some of them don't. And maybe when we do get a critical mass of people thinking principles wise, and there's all sorts of other ways in which we can get at this, the world would be a better place. And so, sorry about that last little bit on preaching. I hope that's helped. Thank you very much for listening and for watching. I do love you all. Thank you and take care.